Thank you for being patient with everything. In September of this year, there have been several forest fires which have been ravaging the western states, most notably California. Many Americans have been wondering who is to blame for all of these forest fires. There has to be something starting this. Well, the fact of the matter is that both the federal and the state government are responsible in a way for this. However, it's gotten many Americans asking, who can we hold accountable? Well, there are several key factors at play here. We have to examine the federal system in which the U.S. is based upon, the federal response given in past natural disasters, what California's budget has been in the past, and the remarks of several politicians, including the president, the governor of California, and a senator from a state who lives nearby. Firstly, the role of the U.S. government has been shifted in the past few decades. Initially, as the Founding Fathers intended for, the U.S. would be a federal system in which two governments exist, a state government and a federal government. Now, the Founding Fathers were extremely crucial and careful with how they gave the federal government powers, with most of the powers being reserved for the state. Think of this as a layered cake, with each responsibility being layered on top of each other, each getting narrower as it goes up and more defined. However, recently, the roles of the government have been more mixed between the state and the federal government. Now, this is not a bad thing, but it makes things a little bit messy. If you recall, the Hurricane Katrina disaster was made even worse by the lack of a federal response and knowing what could and what could not be done. Wildfires are another part of natural disasters, and so it seems to bear repeating that the federal government does need to participate to help the states with their natural disasters. Ultimately, what the federal government is responsible for is food, supplies, soldiers, and any other aid necessary, along with tangible money to help provide for the relief. With this federal response, the amounts of manpower, supplies, and funding has been a little bit lackluster. So for that, we can say that the federal government is to blame. However, there is more to the story. We must analyze the specifics of the California budget and what California has done to stop these disasters. According to the California State Budget Office, California received $170 billion in federal aid last year. That's a big number. So, with delegation to the states providing how they can use that grant, it would be on Governor Gavin Newsom of California to decide where he disperses that money, whether it goes into education, infrastructure, or, for instance, wildfires, since wildfires are not new to Californians. This should be a key part of the budget every year and should be on the governor's radar. Since there have been multiple wildfires, and since that the federal government has been providing the money for aid in any way, this could be chalked up to a state failure and a failure on the part of Governor Gavin Newsom and the state. This is not responsible for the federal government, who is providing the money, at the very least, of what Governor Gavin Newsom needs. However, the important caveat here is the supplies and the manpower that is also provided, of which has not been extremely well documented, so it's hard to say what that brings. But in past, there have been videos of airplanes flying over with flame retardant, mostly provided on the federal level. However, that was not this year, that was in years past. So the federal government has in past years provided manpower, but this year it seems that they have not as much. So that is a much more caveat, or a much more contested situation. But California does in fact have the budgeting, so we can chalk that up to California and Governor Gavin Newsom. Now, there are several leaders on both the state and federal level who have also given responses for what has happened in California. President Trump has said that it has been a mismanagement of forest fires and of forests. In the Washington Post, they said that is not the case, however. This was reported in September 15th, around there, of this year. They say that it is on the federal government to provide other things and that climate change is the main cause. However, constitutional scholar and Utah Senator Mike Lee backed up the president, saying that it was on the state government for one thing to do. And as a neighboring state, he can confirm that management of forests is a crucial part to whether forest fires can ravage a state. The comments of Governor Gavin Newsom are also important here. In a meeting with President Trump on the subject, he said, "We have not been managing our forests as well as we could have." And that was reported in the same Washington Post article on September 15th, 2020. So, what can we gather from all of these? We can gather that while the situation is always going to be nuanced, there are significant things that the state and the governor can do that the federal government simply cannot. However, it is also on the federal government to provide supplies and funding to help fight forest fires. For a definitive answer, it is on the state. It truly is on the state for these forest fires, as shown by Governor Gavin Newsom's own comment saying that he did not do what he needed to do, Senator Mike Lee, a constitutional scholar, saying that it was on Governor Gavin Newsom, and saying that these forest fires have been a cause of mismanagement. Not to mention, $170 billion has been given to California. Clearly, the state is to blame for these forest fires. Thank you.